Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Swerve with me. This is a show where we have adult conversations for mature audiences only. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Happy Mother's Day to birth mothers, to adopted mothers, to foster mothers, to surrogate mothers, to the women in the village who help to raise these children. Anyone out there who's had a hand in anyone's life to make it better and to help them to be better persons. Happy Mother's Day to you all. What a wonderful privilege and pleasure it is to come back with you one more time. Listen, I am so excited. As you come in, tag somebody because we're coming live exclusively from my business page, Swerve with me, and not my profile. And so tag people and let them know this is where you can find us tonight. Bimini's in the house. Bimini always shows up strong. So listen, let Bimini know Mia, LaFrance, and Meyer are live tonight on Swerve with me. Such a wonderful, wonderful time. Happy Mother's Day. Cicely, it's good to see you tonight. Come on and tag somebody as we come in because we want to have a conversation tonight that is intensive and expansive. And I use those words because I want to go deep into mindsets, changes. I want to talk about mistakes made. I want to talk about lessons learned. I want to talk about the whole transformation of the mind and being open and being honest and being communicative because those are some of the things that we struggle with as a people of color, a people of a particular hue or culture. We struggle with trying to open up and to be honest, and that comes so much from our forefathers. That comes so much about this notion of not telling anyone your business and you're supposed to be strong no matter what happens to you and we have to be reconditioned and reprogrammed if we're going to be healthy emotionally. And that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. So as you come in, please tag somebody. Hi, Kizzy Mitchell. Thank you for joining me tonight. Joe Mendez, always here with me. Thank you. Good evening. Happy Mother's Day to all of you. Katina Major, hi, it's good to see you tonight. Please tag somebody because this is coming exclusively from the page, and I want as many persons as possible to get on in. Good evening, Vanessa. Good evening, Vanessa. It's good to have you here. I'm talking now because I'm usually not exclusively on this page, but in order for me to get the statistics that I need to be running the show exclusively from my Swerve page so that I can get the stats that I need. So please go ahead and tag somebody. We're talking tonight about the power and the strength of women, mothers. Good night, Antoinette Roll. It's good to see you. Tag somebody, let them know that we are live tonight. We're talking about some things that may have happened, and you may find similarities because each week when we get on the show and we talk to the various guests, we find similarities. We find that we're not the only persons going through certain things. It's not exclusive to us. Every family has issues. Every family has a backstory. Every family has hidden stories. Every family has skeletons in the closet. Every family has things buried deep, 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 deep in the ground. And some of these things need to be resurfaced if we are to get healing. Good night, Gillette Ferguson. It's good to have you here. And so I want to introduce to you tonight Mia and Maya LaFrance. Mia, I met Mia, I think it was almost a year ago. I'm not even sure, remember what month it was exactly. But Mia was a client of mine in my coaching program, Swerve. And Maya, I got a secret for you. She came in really shy and really kind of closed in herself and I a little apprehensive of sure because it was something new and she didn't know what she was getting herself into. But I watched as the weeks passed, her opening up more and more and the rich conversation and illumination that she brought to the group. And one of the things that I recognized immediately from your mom was that she was a deep thinker And people that are deep thinkers, they often don't say much verbally, but there's so much going on internally. And when that is released, it could be something amazing. On the flip side, that could also be a source of deep concern when people don't. But I'm so glad that she's in a healthy place. And so she was able to share so much and to bring so much richness to our Swerve group. Good night, Arlington Farry. Hannah. Arlington Hannah, thank you so much. We got a male in the house. Thank you so much for being here tonight. So, and then I want to introduce you to Maya, her beautiful 17-year-old, soon to be high school graduate. Maya, Maya, listen here, on her way to FIU to study computer science. So, beauty and brains. That is an awesome combination. Both of you, welcome to Swerve with me. Sorry, that's my bad. Okay, your mic's open. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you so
evening.
much for having us.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you here, guys. Come on in and tag somebody because this is again coming exclusively from my Swerve with Me page. Good night, Amelia Bullard. Good to have you here. So I want to start this conversation with you, Maya. And born and raised in Bimini, born and raised in Bimini, the smallest island in the Bahamas, but such a rich culture. And we know it's customary for persons from Bimini, once they get to high school age, they either go to high school in New Providence, in Florida, or in Grand Bahama. Those are the choices. I went to St. John's at one point, and almost every other person in my class was like from Bimini. Everybody all in between, and who didn't go to St. John's perhaps went to St. Anne's. And so we know that that has been the culture of Bimini for many, many years. So I want to start from the beginning. Tell me about your childhood growing up in Bimini.
So, yes, but first we want to say happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there, whether by nature or whether by nurture, whether you're a godmother or a big auntie or a spiritual mother. We honor you tonight and we say happy Mother's Day. Our mother, her grandmother is on, Antoinette Zero. So we do want to honor mommy tonight also. So yes, you are absolutely right. I am from the beautiful island of Bimini, as we call it. And yes, I did go leave Bimini at the young age of, I was about 15, and I went to Nassau to attend St. Anne's Senior High School. But before I left Bimini, I grew up in a Christian home with my mom and dad, with a Christian family, deeply rooted in the values of God. So I took that with me when I went to Nassau. And growing up as a child in Bimini was a great time. I mean, back in those days, and those of that are on, I see some of my classmates and some of my friends that are on knew that we had a wonderful time growing up in Bimini. I grew up in a home with it's interesting that you said that I was quiet and a deep thinker, because I grew up with a dad that was quiet and a deep thinker. I grew up with a very quiet dad, but I grew up with a very powerful and vocal mother. So I had that nurturing with me before I left to go on to St. Anne's to continue my studies.
How many persons were in the household? Did you have siblings? And what was your relationship like with your siblings?
Yeah, I did have siblings. I there was mommy and daddy had three of us. I have my older sister and an older brother. I am actually the youngest. Um, but my sister went off pretty young to school. My sister left home when she was 13, and then eventually my brother followed. So that just left me at home with mommy and daddy and all that comes with that. So yes.
Were you spoiled?
Oh,
Were you
absolutely.
spoiled?
Oh, yes. I was spoiled. My dad and my mom worked very hard to provide for us. We always had all of our physical needs met. And also very active in our church. We grew up in Our Ladies and St. Stephen's Anglican Church. I shout out to my church back home. And that's the type of upbringing we had. So I technically kind of grew up as an only child for a bit because my brother and sister were older, and my sister first went to Nassau, then she ended up in Florida, and they were off to school already.
So let's talk about being in the home with your mom and the dynamics of that relationship. How would you describe your relationship as a young child growing into your teen years before you left with your mother?
So my mom, for those of you that know her, my mom is a go-getter. My mom had me involved in so many various things I didn't even want to do. I started playing the organ and piano in church at the age of 9 because of my
Mhm.
mom. My mom forced me to go to music school on the island of Bimini for that. And she just made sure that I was involved in as many activities possible that I could be. I didn't always want to do it. She always instilled in me, the power and the presence of God. But not just only my mom, because I grew up with a powerhouse of women around me. I had my grandmother in my backyard. I had my oldest aunt downstairs from me. I had an aunt up the street. So I grew up in a community of strong women, and I honor all of them tonight because their shoulders I stand on, Maya and I. So I grew up with a community of strong women around me.
So let me just chime in and say good night to Karen Stevenson, Esther Stewart, Pauline McAlpin. Hey, Paulie. Happy Mother's Day. And Paul Kingsley Ellis Jr. Good night. He is so proud of you, Mia and Myra. So I guess that's your pastor, right?
Yeah, that's our pastor.
So he's here watching. So before I go on with your story, because I don't want Maya to just be sitting there all this time. So Maya, tell me a little bit about your relationship with your mother. I'm going to chime in already and then go back to her. Tell me about your relationship with your mom.
Okay, well, me and my mother, we have a great relationship. We're best friends. Like, I always know I can always speak to her openly, and I always talk to her every day. Like, I always know that she's there for me no matter what.
And was it always like that?
Yes, for as long as I can remember. It's always been like that. We've always had a strong bond.
Yeah. So you're telling me that she doesn't get on your nerves sometimes?
Oh no, she does, but but we do. We have a very strong bond.
Really, really strong bond. That's great. So back to you, Mia, and talking about your relationship with your mother. Did you have that same kind of open relationship that you have with your daughter?
So it's interesting that she says that she can be open with me because I remember as a little girl growing up, remember my sister and my brother had left the home already. So I remember always this feeling of having to always wanting to please my mom, right? Like everything I did, I wanted to make sure that mommy was pleased, or I always was concerned about her reaction for it. So therefore, and because mom and dad worked so hard and so much, there wasn't that much time for emotional bonding. Right. But even though our physical needs were met, so that kind of left a void where I was not as open with her that as I has tried for Maya to be with me. And again,
Mhm.
this we're talking different times, right? So
Yeah.
back then, the values of more of of a young girl, speak when you are spoken to, or young girls should be quiet and calm. Like that was the value back then that I think is different from nowadays. And so that's kind of what I experienced.
Was there anybody that you connected with, however, to tell your little secrets to, or did you just keep them internal?
I was pretty quiet. I kept most things internal. Even though I had a support system around me, I had a grandmother behind me that was a no nonsense grandmother, that was a praying grandmother. When mom and dad was at work, that was the house I went to. Anyone who knows Miss Bessie that's on, know you could go to Miss Bessie's house, get a good meal, get some ice cream. So I knew I always had these strong women around me that was there for me, but I never took the advantage really of opening up because I was such a quiet and shy child.
Were there things that you felt like you wanted to share with your mother but never got the chance to ask her, either out of fear or just not being daring enough to even put a question to her?
Oh yeah. Growing up, we had a few tragedies in our family, especially with the male members of our family. I recall when I was a little girl and I had an uncle that that died in a plane crash, and I was so close to him. He was a soul tie to me, and I just remember having all these questions about what happened to my uncle and why did it happen. And because my family, my grandmother and my aunts were going through that, I never really had the time to open up and talk to anyone about that. It was so tragic. And not just him. I mean, we had other male members of our family that either perished or something happened to them, that now that I look back, I wish I could have been more open and kind of process it for my emotions to be stable in terms of that.
And so you talk about this trauma about your uncle going missing, and then I recall you telling me that your brother went missing, and so on and so on, so many other persons. But I want to talk about the amazing person that your mother must have been to be able to deal with this trauma and still go ahead, raise you, go to work, be a wife, and all of the other things. So, as you, as a child, began to see these things happen and unfold, what's going on in your mind, and what are you thinking about your mother?
So at the time, especially when my brother was, yes, lost, my brother's lost at sea. We don't know his whereabouts. It happened years ago. And my mother and my brother were very close. I mean, they had a really true mother-son relationship. And I just remembering that to be such a hard time for the entire family. Like my sister and I were really concerned about, is my mom really going to make it through this? But my mom is so resilient. She's so strong. I mean, she's so relentless that it amazes me how she just carried on working, being an entrepreneur, raising us kids, dealing with my dad, and other issues in the family, that it took such resilience and strength. I have a teenage son. I want to give honor to my son, Marcus, tonight. He's in the background also. Such a wonderful boy. But I can't imagine losing Marcus, right? And tonight, I just, my heart goes out to all mothers that have lost a child, whether a son or a daughter, because I saw my mom process this. I saw my mom go through it. She still has her days. She still mourns because, like I said, we don't know his whereabouts. So it was a very, very difficult time as a young girl. So I just remember always trying to be that perfect daughter, because knowing mommy was going through this, I just wanted to make sure that I was as much comfort to her as possible. Yes.
Maya, you heard about these stories about these people being missing in your family. And what did you think about that? And what kinds of questions did you ask your mom?
Um, I was just very in shock and sort of confused, but I didn't really ask many
How did I
questions
handle it?
because it was something that, like, I don't know, I couldn't fully like process. It's so weird to me. It's bizarre.
Hmm. You've watched your mom go through various things in her life and watched her process things. Let me ask you this. Are you guys similar in character?
Mm.
Yes. Yes, very
Yeah.
so.
Oh, yes.
So in the similarities, does that make for conflict or does that draw you closer together?
It draws us closer together, I would say, because she knows exactly how to, like, come to me and how to talk to me, like, to get me to,
Yeah.
talk. Yes.
That's interesting because a lot of times when people have similar personalities, they clash.
Hmm.
Hmm.
They clash because of the similarities, but you're saying because of the similarities and your mom understanding you better, she knows pretty much how to approach you in
Exactly.
certain things. So that's like knowing when to back off
Yes.
and knowing when to come forward. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Listen,
It's
I'm
so
glad that
interesting. We are very much alike. It's so interesting you say that, because a lot of times when we go home to Bimini, they call her Mini Mia. Like they just look at it and say, "Oh, you're Mia. That's Mini Mia right there." And our personalities are so much the same. And I think it's because, and I'm not perfect, and trust me, we have our struggles. It's a teenager, so we definitely have our teenage struggles. Our relationship is not perfect. We're constantly working on it. But I just know that I always remember so much of what she does. It reminds me of myself. Like, even from her
Mm.
physical characteristics to the way she carries herself. And I always think of, oh my gosh, when I was that age, what was I thinking? Or what would I want my mom to say to me if I was going through this? Right. So I
Mhm.
always try and think of that. And a lot of times as parents, we have to think of, okay, what was I going through at that time and this was happening to me? What would I
Mhm.
have wanted my mother to say to me? And we always try that strategy. I always tell her, like, if I was her age, we would totally be best friends, like, because we
Yeah.
get along so
You
well.
really like her, and
Yeah,
she really likes you.
we would be
Like,
friends
not
if
by
we were the
force, but
same
you
age.
just like each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen, if you're just coming into the show, please tag somebody. Please tag them and let them know that me and Mia are in the house and we're talking mother daughter relationships. We're talking lessons learned and mistakes made. Maya, I want to get back to you because I'm changing the course of this conversation as I think more and more about the dynamics of your relationship. And I want to ask you this. At one of the, without sharing the details, but at one of the most difficult times in your life that you faced as a teenager, and this isn't directly directed to your about what your mom did, but when you had a difficult time in your life, or when teens have difficult times, let me put it like that, generally in their lives, I want you to give some advice to a mother on how to handle her daughter when she's going through a really difficult time in her life.
Listen.
Okay, the first thing I would say is probably just try and talk to her. Just let her know that you're there for her, and eventually she will come. Because that's something my mom does to me all the time. She's just like, I know, Ma, you're going through something, but I'm here for you. And eventually I do. I go to her and I do talk to her, and she does help me through it.
Do you think that's typical or that's just your relationship? Because teenage girls, and I was one of them, and I have sisters, they are difficult creatures. They are difficult creatures to talk to. Let's just put it out there. So you you were able to talk to your mother now. Do you have friends that I'm sure you guys talk at that don't share the same type of relationship with their mother?
Yes, yes, I do.
And what are some of the things that you say to them in dealing with their relationship with their mothers?
I just say again communication. I really feel like communication is key. I feel like they should talk to their mother and tell them how they feel, and hopefully their mother will do the same and they can somehow find a solution.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Mia, you went to school in Nassau at 15, and as was the custom of Bimini, as you say, I got to get it right, Bimini.
That's right.
People say Bimini. So, leaving Bimini and going into Nassau, what was that like? Because you're away from everything that you've ever known as a teenager and going into Nassau, I guess, to live with family or whomever. What was that transition like?
So I'm going to say something that my mother probably doesn't even know, but that was one of the worst experiences of my life. I was there for 2 years in high school, and I really was homesick. I really missed my home. I really missed my parents. I went back home every chance I could get, every Easter, every Christmas, every midterm break. Because coming from Bimini, where, I was so sheltered and I had so much support around me. And then I moved to a huge city with a friend of a family member. It was a difficult transition for me, both academically and emotionally.
Hmm. So how did you? Oh, good night, Jerusha. Jerusha's on. Hey, Ju. Good to see you. That's my good long time high school friend. She's from Bimini too. Yeah. So what was the transition like when you got international? I should ask you, what type of coping mechanism did you use in order to stay sane, being away from family at such a young age?
Yeah, the strategy I used was to stay connected with the other Bimini kids that were in Nassau, especially
Mhm.
the ones that were at St. Anne's. We really bonded and we helped each other through this transition time. So that's kind of how I coped with it, just to let the time go by so that I would graduate and actually leave. Yeah.
So after you graduated and you go to college in Atlanta,
Hmm. Hmm.
and let me ask you this, because was the mindset ever that you would return to Bimini at the time?
At the time, no, probably not. I matriculated on to Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, under the care and guidance of my great aunt Susan Leathers. I don't know if she's on right now, but I honor her tonight. Um, and because of I studied journalism in the beginning, so I never had the mindset of returning to Bimini. I just knew that I will always end up in the States. I knew that. Yeah.
You just always do that. So now we're getting back to going through um, completing your undergrad, and then you move on to Florida to do graduate studies. And what was that like? Well, I mean, ultimately, people say Bimini, Florida, anyway. So I guess you felt like you were home, right? So what was that like, being going to grad school in Florida, and you ultimately met your husband there? So Maya, we coming to you, we coming around to you. So tell us about your studies in grad school and meeting your husband.
Yeah, so I was happy to be in Florida, like you say. Bimini was very close. That was always my aim, to get closer to home. Um, and then there is where I found my love for education. Actually, in grad school, I switched to special education, and that's what I got my master's degree in. Yes, and I met my husband on the campus of FIU. So Florida has been nice to me. Florida has been good to me.
It's been really nice to you.
So it's
So
been,
let's talk
yes.
about that connection, about you meeting your husband and ultimately having a Maya. But let's talk about that connection. Was it a connection that you knew it was something that was going to last? Did you know this was like a little reluctant? Were you hesitant? Let's talk about that journey.
Yeah, so he was actually studying architecture at the time at FIU. He was a student, and I worked on the campus in the library there. So we had an immediate connection. I knew it would be something long term, something long lasting. I had been praying and seeking God at that point just to lead me in the right direction. I'd already had my bachelor's. I had my was working on my master's. Still a lot of uncertainty, and as I prayed, and God leaded me towards Mark, my husband, and I honor him tonight. It was a divine thing for it to happen.
So how soon did you guys marry after meeting?
So we married about 3 years, 2 to 3 years after meeting.
Okay.
And then we had Maya 3 years later.
3 years later. So when Maya came, how did life change for you two?
Oh, it was a drastic change, because Maya was a surprise, a beautiful surprise, and I thank God for allowing me to be her mother. Um, and so when that happened, it was for me a balance challenge. I am one that when I start something, I like to see it through, and I'm not a perfectionist, but I always like to give it my all, and I like to see things happen right. So, when you're a young mother, things don't always go the way you plan. I'm a planner. I have always have my times written down. My planner was out the window. It was all Maya's schedule at that point. So it was a challenge being a young first mother. But again, I thank God for my mother Antoinette. She came over from Bimini, and she stayed with me for a while, at least a year. So I had that support system around me, to really, really help out. And tonight, I really remember my grandmother, Bessie Roll, because she was here in the States at the time. And I would call her crying and saying, I can't do this. And she was in her 70s at this point. And she would come on over, and she would grab Maya, and she would get the clothes. She said, get these clothes and throw them in the washer. And she's like, stop that crying.
Mhm.
So I really remember my grandmother really, really being a support at that time also.
Maya, what are some of your earliest memories of your mother, and some of the lessons that she has taught you?
Probably one of my earliest memories. I truthfully can't remember any. Um, I would probably say in 5th grade, probably my graduation, she was there
Hmm.
for me, and she taught me. She was there to support me, obviously, and I can't really remember a lesson, but that was probably my earliest memory. I remember.
Was
It's
she
fifth grade.
strict? Was she strict?
She was strict. Yeah, she was.
Did
She
you
just
think she was unfair, or did you kind of know that, or did you kind of understand what she was doing?
No, I understood, but she was very strict, but I did
Okay,
understand.
so strict. And what was the like a daily routine for Maya in I would say in middle school, because you probably would remember that more. So what was like a routine, like the do's and don'ts
Mm.
for
Um,
you?
I always remember every morning she would always make me make up my bed. Like she would sometimes, like she wouldn't let me, like in high school, like she would always tell me make up your bed. Like even if the bus was waiting outside, she would always make me make up my bed. So that's something I always remember. And as soon as I get home, I take a shower, do my homework, go straight to the table and do my homework. That's something I
And
always,
so that was a routine that stuck with you throughout. So
yes.
she didn't. At what point did she didn't have to tell you to do that anymore?
Um, Probably my 10th grade year, it just became a routine. Probably freshman, we just became like a routine.
It just kind of stuck.
Mhm.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What are some of the things that you really, really love about your mother?
I love how I can, again, communication. I could speak to her openly. Like even sometimes, if like she doesn't like what I have to say, like she was willing to sit there and listen to me and try and find a solution.
And what is it that you don't like about?
Is that as I can't something I don't like? Probably that she as much as she does listen to me, it has to be I have to speak a certain way. Like I can't just say anything any type of way. It has to be respectful. Like even if it's something I'm saying isn't necessarily not disrespectful, but it's something that I know she might not want to hear, I do have to say in a respectful tone. And sometimes that does bother me because it's something that's bothering me. So sometimes it doesn't always come out perfect, but that's something I have to make sure I do.
Okay, because like when you're venting,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's why we have this thing where we don't react, we respond, right? This
Hmm.
is one of the things that we push in Swerve, like you never react to things because your reaction may not be the best one. But when you respond to something, you take the time to before you talk, and that's so very, very important. So that's not a bad thing. I mean that's cool. So Mia, when in raising in Meyer, and then what, a couple of years later, you have your son Marcus. So this is where I want to ask you, and as they grew, has your parenting style changed in terms of raising Maya and raising Marcus?
Well, Maya and Marcus have different personalities. So that kind of dictates more of how I parent them, right? Rules are still rules, right? We have rules, we have structures in place. Um, but in terms of how I treat them, it's basically the same. But I would say that with boys, because my son is so characteristic, not that Maya is not. Um, but we laugh so much with Marcus because it's like I always feel that I could relate better to Maya because I kind of know what she's going through as a young girl, as a teenager, and her personality is so much similar to mine that I lean a lot on my husband to deal with Marcus. I'm like, okay, this is what's happening with Marcus. Can you kind of deal with this? Because he is a male too, and I figure dad would have a better chance at handling that situation.
Hmm. What about the bond and the openness that you share with Maya? Does he does he feel and does he talk to you about anything, or is it just different because you're a girl and he's a boy?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a girl and he's a boy. The openness is still there, but much more so with Maya than with him. He is definitely more quiet. I have to pry a little more. I have to stay in his room a little more and nag him a little more until he's like, okay, mommy. Um, to get it out of him. But I think that's just the boy dynamics, and especially at being a teenage boy too. When he was younger, it was much different. But as he gets older, we see this happening. But that's why we keep fighting, we keep praying, because we have this thing about breaking cycles, right, in families, and breaking that cycle of emotional silence and emotional neglect. And the only way that we can get better at it is if we keep knocking on that door, and we keep trying to make it happen.
As a mother, what are some of the mistakes that you've made that if you had an opportunity, you would do it differently, you would approach something differently?
I always feel that, I wish I had done a better job, especially when they were in middle school, and listening to them instead of going based on how I grew up or what my mother taught or did to me. For instance, I'm a role, so I come from a slew of musicians, right? Um, and I was a musician early. My mom made me go to music school. So, of course, what do I do when they get in middle school, right? She goes to clarinet class and my son goes to trumpet, and they were in the school band, and I loved it as a mom. I was one of those band parents. I was on the board. I loved all of these activities, but guess what? They were miserable.
Mhm.
They did not like it. They hated it. And I mean, to the point of tears, and not wanting to go to school. And my husband and I had to have a conversation and say, hey, wait a minute now. Is this something that we're forcing on them? Or is this something, and we should continue because it's something of value to them? Or do we need to listen to what they're saying to us, right? So if it's starting to affect their academics and their emotions, then maybe we really need to look at this music situation. And that's the decision that we had to make.
So let's talk about that, Maya. What was that like? Did it feel like torture to you, or was it at any point that you enjoyed doing it? Let's talk about that period where you were pretty much placed in band. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah, the first probably 2 years I did enjoy it, but that last year I was over it, and I was so frustrated because I'm like, why are they making me do this? I don't want to do this, and they were like, no, you're LaFrance, you have to finish this. We finished stuff through, so
So you had to finish it. When it
yes,
was over, what did that feel like?
I felt free. I was like, oh, I don't have to do this anymore. Thank God.
What 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 lessons have you learned from your mother that you will take into your adulthood as a mother? Like when you become a parent, what are some of the values and things that you're going to pass on to your child or children?
Again, communication, listening, and communicating, and of course, always praying. A family that prays together stays together. So,
Hmm. Yeah, that is so awesome, man. So, y'all, please tell me something else. Like, this is like watching like a Cinderella,
But let me tell
you
you this
know, some
this
fairy tale. Yeah, I want to hear something like, tell me a story of conflict, okay? So people out there could be like, okay, now this is real. We can relate to this. So seriously, tell me about a difficult time that you guys had to work through, and even though you talked about it, you still didn't agree on it. So anybody, you can take that.
But I just want to put in that this harmony you see, or what's happening here, it is real, but we do have our challenges. But it's not mainly because of us. We stand on the shoulders of our foremothers. And tonight, I remember my great grandmother Leonora Roll, and Edith Davis, and my grandmother Bessie Roll, and Winifred Brown, and of course my mother Antoinette Roll, because a lot of these dynamics we got from them, right? That I got from my mother, and now I'm passing it on to Maya. Um, but we handle conflicts talking openly. I mean, we really do. I mean, we had, and when she went into high school, I always have this thing of being a high achiever academically. So I wanted her in honors classes and AP classes. And I really was pushing her to the point where she was in tears and like, Mommy, no, it's too much. I don't want to take pre-cal in ninth grade. And we had a lot of back and forth about it because, you know, I came from Bimini and then on St. Anne's, like A levels and O levels, like this is what you do. Like, you got to have that rigor. So I think that was one of our biggest challenges. With her. I mean, we had fights, we had tears, and I'm like, okay, do what you want to do. And we kind of worked it out where I decided that, hey, she does need a balance. Like, every child is not the same. And a lot of times as mothers, there is no cookie cutter way of having your child, right? I was speaking to my aunt a few weeks ago, and she reminded me that there's no manual for mothering. I mean, there are books that are written and there are resources, but there's no one way to do it. And no child or none of your children are the same. And we just have to watch for those signals of where God is pointing them in to lead them to all that He has called them to be, and not necessarily what we want them to be.
And what are some of the lessons that you've learned as a result of being a mother that pretty much can be applied in any area of your life?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
sorry, no, before we go back to that, Maya, because I had asked you, what are some of the values that, other than communication, because other than that, what from what you've learned from your mother will you take into your relationship with your children?
Probably that everyone handles things differently, such as how she talked about how me and my brother were two totally different people. Me, I do like to talk things out. With my brother, he's more quiet. And I feel like I would take into account as a mother when I'm older that to just let them do what they want to do or what they need to do, and eventually they will come to you.
Mhm. As a result of your relationships in your family dynamics, Mia, you've written a book, Pursuing Peace in Mother-Daughter Relationships. Tell us the premise behind that book and give us some insight into some of the things that you talk about.
Yeah, Pursuing Peace in Mother-Daughter Relationships is a book that Maya actually wrote the forward for the book.
I
Um,
read it.
yes, yes. And this book actually came out of my father died suddenly a few years ago, a day after Valentine's Day. He and my mom had a nice Valentine's Day dinner, and the next morning she found him on our bathroom floor. He had a massive heart attack, and it was so sudden for our family that it kind of it we were so shocked, and that it revealed to us the true essence of the type of relationship between my mom and I, and also my sister and I, and so many dynamics of our family. And I had so many regrets of things that I wish that I had told my dad, right? And then this book also came out of friends and family members around me who were also going through mother-daughter dynamics, mother-daughter challenges. I had friends that hadn't spoke to their mother in years. I had mothers that didn't know where their daughters were. And I felt that this was a conversation that needed to be had. I grew up on strong values of praying, but I am wholeheartedly, I believe in praying, but I also believe that faith without works is dead, right? So there are some practical strategies, that communication strategies, increasing your emotional connection strategies that we can also put in place in order to enhance these relationships. So that's basically the premise of the book.
So when you came to the coaching program, this book had been on hold for a while because you had started the book,
Mhm.
but I guess you had come to a roadblock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you manage? Because speak to people like me who's still trying to finish a book. Like, how did you manage to push past whatever was that blockage to actually complete the book as a result of being in that program?
Well, the good thing about being in Swerve was I was able to deal with increasing my self-awareness. You know, we have a premise in our foundation, Pursue the Promises, where we talk about build, and B stands for becoming aware of your personal values. And I am a true proponent of being self aware, because if you don't know who you are and who God has called you to be, there is going to be so much blockages going on. You're going to be swaying from left to right, right? You're going to be starting one thing and then stopping one thing. And this is what I found myself doing. I would start something and I wouldn't finish it, or I was unsure about it, or I was afraid of what people would say, afraid of what my mother would think, or how would this affect my sister. So I had to deal with all these aspects of being self-aware. What do I like or what I don't like? And then this helped once I was able to say, okay, this is who God has called me to be. This is the purpose that I need to be walking in. Then it was, and surrounded myself support system, becoming a member of Glory Seekers and being around that support system, which I think is very important. And you talk about this in Swerve, about being around support system, people that can help push you along, then that made all the difference.
Mhm. So let's talk more about the foundation. And Maya, I want you to chime in and tell us about this foundation that you and your mother have founded.
Oh,
Pursue.
yes, Pursue the Promises. It is a organization that is made to empower and inspire women and teens, mothers, and daughters.
So, what types of activities do you do? And tell us, roll it out. Tell us what's going to happen, when it's coming, and for you as a teenager, and in helping to find or yeah, find this foundation. How meaningful is it to you, and why should a teenager and a mother become involved in this foundation?
I think it's meaningful, and I do believe that mothers and daughters, they should become a part of this foundation, is because the mother and daughter bond is something that it stays with you throughout the rest of your life. You know, if your bond isn't strong, it's something you're going to carry throughout the rest of your life.
Hmm. So, what are some of the things that you'll be doing in the foundation, Mia?
Well, first of all, we have a podcast that will be launched May 31st called the Promise Pusher Podcast, where we will explore the mother daughter relationship, challenges with women in general, that will happen. So we're excited about that. That's coming out. We also have our book, Pursuing Peace in Mother Daughter Relationships, and we have an online course that will also be launched at the end of the month to go along with this book. Please, you are willing, please check us out on our website for more resources and services at pursuethepromises.com. And we are just excited of all that God is doing and will do through Pursue the Promises, and with women, mothers, daughters, youth. As well. We also have a resource tab there, because we know that Mother's Day is not always a happy day for a lot of people. It is a day of pain for some, and we honor and we love those tonight that are mourning, that don't have their mothers probably here on earth anymore, or missing their mothers. So we know that's a factor also that we don't want to leave out.
So, when they become a part of this foundation, what happens? Because what is the end result? I know you're going to talk about, the mother daughter dynamic, but what's the end result?
The end result is to build stronger bonds and break the cycles of emotional neglect, emotional silence in so many of our families.
So let's talk about some of those cycles. How do they appear in family structures? Because at the top of the hour, I was talking about the cultural dynamics and the fact that people are not as open, not just as Bahamians, but as people of color. For some reason, we're not as open to share about our struggles. We're not as self-aware as we ought to be, and it has so much to do too with being people pleasers and what somebody else may think about me if I say I'm having a challenge in this area, or if I don't appear to be strong. It has so much to do with what is projected on us from other people. And it starts with that whole valuing yourself and how you feel about yourself. So let's talk about that whole cycle in families, that when you notice things are repetitive, we call them generational curses, we call them cycles, whatever it is. Let's talk about this, because you've done the research and you do work in this area in terms of counseling, whatever. what are some of the steps that people can take? And in particular, let's talk mother daughter, since that's why we're here, to begin to. We talked about the communication, but outside of just talking about it, because remember, you may have a person who is just non communicative and they're not ready to open up. And so we say communication is key, but how do you deal with that person who's still in that process where they're not yet ready to talk about it?
Yeah, I think the key is to you sometimes you have to meet people where they're at, right? So, for instance, a lot of times my kids, let's say for instance, my kids, Maya and Marcus, if they're not ready to open up, I sometimes have to meet them where they're at. I know my kids will answer a text in a minute. They would answer a text minute message before they answer me calling on the phone. So I sent a quick text and I would get a response, believe it or not. So this is we're in the era where we kind of have to kind of meet them where they're at. And sometimes they don't want to talk to me, right? I had a family member the other day volunteered to talk to my kids for me about an issue that I was having. So sometimes we may have to reach out to other people because as mothers, it may not be us, but we have people in our community that probably can help in that area. And
You know,
exposure is key. Like I think as mothers, the more we expose our kids to seeing others open up and how you actually do it and what should it entail, and when we model it ourselves, then it is more likely to come. Just like with prayer, like I model prayer for my kids. I actually let them see me how this is how you pray. I have it on their walls in their rooms. This is what you say. With practice and with modeling, then we start to see little results.
Maya, how has that helped you with your prayer life? The things that she said she's done, the prayer on the wall, the family prayer. How has that helped you as a teenager?
It has helped because for a while, to be honest, I didn't really know how to pray. So that was something, having my mom there, telling me, having papers on the wall, explaining it to me, it did help me because I knew how to ask for what I needed or what I wanted, the guidance I needed.
Is that something that you shared with your friends
Um,
when they're challenged with stuff? Have you ever?
well, yes, because most of my friends, they're very like Christian based, very in the their youth service and all this. So yes, that is something we have talked about.
Listen, Maya has friends that come to her for everything. Like she's the little advice lady. She has friends that come to her for advice, and she would say, "Mommy, so and so asked me what I thought about this, and I talked her through it." I'm like, "Okay, Maya, all right,
Learning
very
some
good."
stuff. All right. That's good stuff. So we're talking about pursuing mother-daughter relationships with Mia and Maya LaFrance. And we've talked about the dynamics of this mother-daughter relationship. And oh, Arlington Hannah, my mother died on Mother's Day. Wow. So that will always be something so memorable. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's significant.
Mm-hmm.
I think wow, losing a mother. I mean, let's put it like this, shifting a little bit. For those of you who still have your mothers, listen, hang on to her for as long as you can. My mom died in 1998. That was a long time ago, right? But every time Mother's Day comes around, so Arlington Hannah, I can relate to that. You just remember certain things, and there's like a void, like it's something that you feel in the pit of your stomach. I'm telling you. And I likened it to perhaps maybe that whole cutting and severing of the umbilical cord. Like you feel that like in the pit, unlike anything. Oh, so celebrate your moms every day, not just even when you don't like us. Celebrate her, not just on Mother's Day. So we're talking about these mother-daughter dynamics and the breaking of the generational curses and stuff. Let's talk about the chapters. What chapter? Because I write stuff all the time. For example, I write speeches for people all the time. I mean, just over the years, and there's always a certain part of the speech where you just love this part of it. Like, not so much that part, not so much, but I love this part because I'm thinking the delivery and all that kind of stuff. So you wrote this book. Tell me, like, what are some of the standout chapters in the book that when you wrote it, you were like, and was it cathartic for you?
Yeah, I think it would have to be our chapter on look within and peace will show up.
So let's talk about that.
Look within and peace will show up. Talking about your identity and who God says you are, not necessarily who mommy says or who daddy says or who man says, but as you look within and you really dig deep inside, who does God say that you are? Because I know for a long time as a mother, for years I got caught up in being a mother, being a wife. To my husband and a mother to my kids. And then I looked up one day and my kids were teenagers. And I didn't have any more diapers to change. I didn't have to do as much laundry because they do their own laundry. I wasn't riding from this soccer game to this tennis game and I looked up and my teenagers were a little more independent and they didn't need me as much. And I
Mhm.
started looking around the house like, okay, so who am I? Who are you, Mia? So now what? Now what are you going to do? So I had to go back to God. I had to go look within and see, finish what I started before I have them to be all that God has called me to be, to walk in my purpose. So that chapter, well, after I wrote it, I was like, wow, Holy Spirit, you wrote this chapter. Clearly, you wrote this chapter. Yeah.
So it spoke to some of the deepest parts of who a person is and understanding that. I could recall when we were in a session, we were talking all about purpose and brain dumping and coming down and rooting out all those things to find out exactly who you were. And it was like an aha moment, an epiphany for you when the bells went off
Yeah.
and finding yourself again. I think a lot of women who have raised children come to that point where now what? We've been the best wife we could be and mother, and now what? And we're happy with our lives to an extent, but not satisfied. So I want you to speak to that mother out there who may be struggling, who may be they have a wonderful marriage, they love their children, but they're still searching for more. I want you to talk to her tonight.
Yeah. I encourage you, mom, daughter, sister, friend, go back to the source. Go back to who created you. God created you just as you are, just as He wanted you. You know, it says in Jeremiah, for I know the plans that I have for you. So, in order to find that out, you must go back to the source for that. Don't get frustrated. You find a support group, find a system, find people, surround yourself with like minded people that can help push, get you to that level. Because God didn't just call you to be a mother, right? God called you to be so much more. And as you search and as you pray and as you dig, He will reveal that to you within His time.
Abaya, you are about to graduate high school in what, next month, in a couple of weeks.
Oh,
First of
yes.
all, what does that feel like? Like, how are you feeling?
I'm still in shock, to be honest. It just, I feel like it happened so quickly. Like, I feel like I was just in middle school the other day and now I'm
Mm.
graduating.
So are you leaving home to go on campus, or are you commuting?
No, I'm staying here. But yeah, I'm
Oh,
commuting. I'll be back.
oh, okay. So you don't have to, you're not leaving the nest yet.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
actually, okay. Mia's like, nah. Listen. So, what are you looking forward to most about matriculating? Yeah, what are you
Um,
looking forward to most?
what I'm looking forward to most is probably just having that experience, that whole college experience. I'm very excited to have it and to just, to just start the next chapter of my life.
And let everybody know what you'll be studying and what do you plan, if you do have any plans to do with that particular degree.
I'm studying computer science. I want to get a Bachelor of Arts in computer science. And what I aspire to be is an informational systems analyst.
So what does that mean for lay people?
That pretty much just means you help businesses integrate technology into their business to help it run more efficiently and smoother. So,
Okay, so it's really tacky. That's
yeah,
what you say. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So I want to, Mia, what is your greatest desire for Maya?
My greatest desire for Maya is to be all that God has called her to be. My greatest desire that she walks bold and fearlessly into her God-given assignment, and not be concerned too much about man or woman, but keep her eyes on what God has said. I pray for her salvation. I pray that Maya, receives and keeps Jesus Christ close to her heart so that she is with him in glory one day, while she fulfilled and also fulfilled her God-given assignment here on earth.
What mistakes have you made that you don't want her to make?
Um, Number one, I would like her to always be true to herself. Like it took me a while just to be true to myself. Who am I really? Um, Not really concerned about too much about who others think I should be, but I really would like for her not to make that mistake, not to take too long to be self-aware. For sure. Yeah.
And the same for Marcus. What is your greatest desire for him?
The same desire for Marcus. Being a young black boy in this society, being a young boy, but especially black boys, it's so difficult in this society. Teenagers on the whole, but I just think being a young black man has such a different dynamics to it. I pray that he is always surrounded by God-fearing men that show him the way. I also pray that he walks in his God-given assignment also and be all that God has called him to be.
I then talk to what would you say? I want you to talk to your mother, and then I want you to talk to your sister. And then Maya, I want you to talk to your mom about what is your greatest desire for her. So yeah, let me start there and then I'll let you talk to your mom and sister Mia. So Maya, what is your greatest desire for your mother? So speak to her.
Oh, my greatest
A little
desire.
louder.
Oh, okay. My greatest desire is for you to continue growing and to continue to expand because I see a lot of great things for you.
All
I see
right.
my mom just taking over the world.
All right.
All right. Good stuff. Love it. Okay. So talk to your mom. Say something to your mother that you've never said to her before.
Well, my mom will be 75 tomorrow. Tomorrow is her birthday.
Happy birthday, mom.
Happy birthday, mom. Happy
Birthday.
birthday, mom. I thank you and I honor you for your courage, for your strength, for your stamina that you have carried my siblings and I and this entire family. I know you grieve a lot, mom. I know you grieve a lot for daddy. I know you grieve a lot for my brother. But God has kept you and he will continue to keep you through all of it and through it all. Um, at this age, I do hope that you see the love you have around you. You recognize the support you have around you. You're not alone and you don't have to do it alone. You have me, you have my sister, you have so many people that's on your side that's rooting for you. And we just thank God for you and who you are. I know you lost your dad at the age of 13. I know what hurt that must have been dealing with my grandmother and her being sick and having to take care of her. But look where God has brought you. Like, look what He has brought you. Look where He has brought you and will continue to carry you. So I just want you to let go, mommy. Let go of all the past hurts. I want you to continue to learn to forgive and move on because forgiveness is a grace gift to you. Remember, it's not for anyone else, but it's for you to be free. It's for you to be open and wide open and just being available to God has for you. So we love you. We celebrate you tonight and we honor you. Antoinette Carlise Roll.
So speak to your sister. I want you to speak into your sister's life.
Oh, my sis, my Chiquita, my one and only, my love. I am a lot of my book, and I've told you this, a lot of my book has been because of your vulnerability. And I thank you for that. I honor you. You did not naturally give birth, but you have always been a mother to Maya and Marcus. And so for to that tonight, we thank you for it. Um, we thank you for the sacrifices that you have made to our family and for our family. We pray God's blessings on you, and you deserve to be happy. You deserve happiness for the rest of your life. And we pray for your salvation. We pray that God speaks to you and allow Him to use you and to be powerful. You're charismatic, you're loving, you're sociable, you're funny, but we want you to use that for the Lord, and He will see you through. So we love you.
That's awesome. Maya, you now talk to teenagers about how they can build a stronger relationship with their mothers. Say something to them, and then say something about your mother that you've never said to her before. Say
Okay.
something to her. Yeah.
To the teens, I would say that your parents, they're more understanding than you think they are. Like you might think, oh no, they don't get it, or oh no, they're just gonna scream at me, da da da. But they will try to understand, and they will try to communicate, and they will try to give like a solution to
And then
whatever.
say something to your mom that you've never said to her before. Just think
Um,
about something.
I would say that I love you. Well, I tell you this all the time, but I would say I appreciate you and that you are so strong and hardworking and just amazing.
Oh.
Just yeah.
So the fact that you're not leaving home yet, then you're not gonna really miss her when it comes to being in college. But what are some of the and I may have asked this before, but what are some of the things that you will carry with you even going into college? Because even though you're not leaving home, you're going to a new environment where really you have to be in control and disciplined and focused, because you could get torn and pulled in any direction. So what are some of the things, like when you sit in a classroom or when you begin to do something, what are the words that you will hear in your head from your mother? Like, what does she say constantly?
I would probably say that she would say that everything happens for a reason, that though something might be hard, or though this class
Mhm.
might be hard, that God doesn't put nothing in your path that He doesn't think that you can overcome. So that's something I'll definitely keep in my brain forever.
That's hope. That's hope. That's what you call hope, and that's an awesome thing to have instilled in her. Mia, you have done an amazing job of raising Maya. Maya, we're so proud of you, and obviously Marcus as well, because
Marcus is just as remarkable. Yes.
Marcus as well,
Yes.
as you continue some of the things in writing your book. And I know you've had opportunities to even go and speak and appear at workshops and all that kind of things. What's next for Mia, the author, the mother, the counselor, the what else? Like what next is on your bucket list to accomplish?
Yeah. So waiting on directions from the Holy Spirit, but I have already had clearance from the Holy Spirit for a book on pursuing peace in mother-son relationships. So I hope to venture over and work on a project with Marcus to
Mm.
get this off the ground, because I think that, the family dynamics, the world is helping to grow our children, between social media and all of these other media platforms, that we as parents, as mothers, as fathers, are kind of losing the grip on our kids. And I feel that, if I can help to combat that in any way, of steering our kids in the right direction, the way that God has meant them to be, then that will be my continued mission in life. Absolutely.
But you mentioned social media, so I want to take this back to Maya because it just clicked in my head. For teens, especially, how important is social media? I mean, like in your day to day life, and what what do you think would happen if you didn't have a cell phone or a tablet or a laptop?
Well, social media, I'm not really on social media. I feel like it's something that's just negative. So I definitely have taken a huge step back from it. But without my phone and stuff, I feel like it would just be weird because I can't communicate with people, like my friends and stuff like that. So
I use it to organize. Like
yeah.
she uses that
Yeah.
calendar, so she keeps
So
organized.
she's an organizer like you are and a planner, and so
Yes,
yeah, she has the same traits. Okay.
yes.
So are you guys anal or are you kind of pretty relaxed? I mean, seriously, are you? OCD. Are you? You think? No? Okay. So what about in terms of going into to going into this new, I guess I want to call it new environment of being away from your mother, even though you're still going to be at home, you're going to be away from her more than you are accustomed to being away from her when it comes to being in college. How does what are you thinking about that? Is there a bit of fear, relief, uncertainty? What?
Probably not really any of those because she's grown me up to, you know, be able to take care of myself and handle myself. But more of like not being able to see her like as much as I see her now, and not be able to talk to her and stuff like that. That does, you know, give me a little bit of fear because she's my best friend. I tell her everything. After every day, I just go and I just vent to her. So
Yeah, that's actually a really unique relationship to have, and I know you value it, and you don't take it for granted, Maya, because trust me, your relationship with your mother is not the rule for most mother-daughter relationships. It's not the rule, it's the exception. And it shows that you guys have put in the work. And that's what happens when you put in the work. You get the kind of results that you need, and with mothers and sons as well, because there are some dynamics in that relationship that are just different, than. And I'll give you an example. One of my sisters, I don't know if she's on tonight, but my nephew was sick the other day. He wasn't feeling well. So he immediately calls his mom and said to pray, right? So he's married, and he tells his wife, don't just look at me, pray, right? So she's crying because he's in pain. So she's being empathetic because she's feeling this pain, and he's frustrated with her because he wants her to pray. And he's like, you know what? That's why I'm going to call my mother, because she's not going to cry. She's going to pray. And so that dynamic in their relationship, and he's like 30 maybe now, and so for him to have that reliance on his mother, that whenever something happens to him, she's still gonna come through for him at that age,
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
that's a dynamic, that is just absolutely amazing to me. So I just want to say thank you guys for this opportunity to get a sneak peek into your life. Maya, I'm so proud of you.
Thank
You
you.
Yeah.
aced
Thank you
it.
so
You
much.
nailed it.
You.
You nailed it. Mia, keep doing the great work. Keep doing the great work that you're doing. Keep inspiring people. Keep showing people how this dynamic of mother and daughter and mother and son can work. If you put the effort in, if you take the time to understand each other, if you take the time to listen to each other, but more importantly, and if you took the take the time to be self-aware and to allow the person to be themselves,
Yes.
not your version of what you think they should be, but actually who they are, and ultimately them finding who God intends for them to be.
Yes.
Because I believe that's the quest that we all have. We're
Yes.
all on this journey to become not only the best versions of ourselves, but to truly tap into that person that God has called us to be. And that's why we're all here. So thank you guys for opening up, for sharing. There were so many other places that we could have gone with this, but I appreciate
Mm.
exactly where you have gone. We look forward to hearing more from you. I look forward to seeing you on stage, just because, Maya, I tend to agree with you. I see her doing great things.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
see her doing amazing things. And as the doors continue to open, embrace them all. No more excuses. And I know you threw excuses away a long time ago. And so here's the thing, we pray, and then when doors open, sometimes we're apprehensive.
Right.
Well, we were praying for the door to open. And so always be aware and sensitive that this is something I already prayed for. Now I'm in a position where I'm just asking for guidance through the door,
Yes.
not whether I should walk through the door, but the guidance as I walk through the door. So stay open,
Yeah.
stay open. Maya, stay open.
Yes, okay.
Stay open to the possibilities as you walk across that stage next month. Just see yourself on that campus dominating,
Mhm.
dominating. You're there to take up space. That's why you're there, to take up space, to own where you are. No self-doubt. No
True.
self-doubt. Like whenever you enter a room, whatever room it is, even if you've never been there before, you entered there because you belong there. That's
Yes.
why you're there.
That's right.
You know, so keep yourself in that frame of mind. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Ingrid Ellis says Meyer nailed it.
Yes.
Thank
On
you.
Ingrid. Thank
Keep
you.
being. Paula Ellis Mills says hi. Mia and Maya, blessings to you.
To you, Dr.
Ingrid says you get out of it what you put in. Just so many other relationships. Monique Pratt. Wallace says great show. Listen, guys, you nailed it. You knocked it out the park. You were your authentic selves, and we appreciate that so much. So thank you so much, ladies, for swerving with me. Listen, when you get off, tag some other people. It's on the page. Tell them where to find you guys on the page. Have a wonderful night and even greater week, and keep on doing you and being all that God has called you both to
Amen.
be. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.